Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Israel Hawkins. Jeff is on assignment today. With the changing of the seasons comes the change in weather patterns. As we've seen or have been reporting, the weather all around the globe has been becoming more extreme in place after place. Texas is no exception to that rule. As the saying goes, everything's bigger in Texas, and that also includes tornadoes. In North Texas, at least 6 people were killed and volunteers are searching for the missing. An EF4, the second most deadly classification for a tornado, was just one of the string of tornadoes that struck North Texas, hitting Granbury, Texas, and destroying 19 buildings and 17 mobile homes. Not too far away, in Cleburne, as many as 300 homes were hit. Now, this storm brought with it a string of tornadoes that laid waste mobile homes and mansions over a 6-county area. Around 5:30 in the evening, the first twister touched down, bringing with it baseball-sized hail and winds approaching 200 miles per hour. A 26-minute early warning was credited with saving lives. In Granbury, Texas, there were 110 homes at one time. 97 of those homes were affected and 19 were destroyed. Homes were stripped down to their foundations and residents were prevented from returning to their homes to examine the damage because of fear of propane tanks leaking. In Cleburne, about 25 miles away, the 1-mile-wide tornado was headed for one family's home who huddled in their kitchen with their 21-year-old son just home from college, wondering if they were going to make it out alive. Thankfully, despite the size and fierceness of that tornado, no fatalities were being reported. Now, we brought you a report on the recent IRS scandal. We want you to pay attention as you watch the next video as the House Ways and Means Committee grilled and under oath Stephen Miller. Take a look at this.
These organizations received during their application for tax-exempt status. I would like to just highlight a few of those purported abuses and ask for your opinion on them. A letter from the IRS Office of Exempt Organization Specialist in El Monte, California, specifically the Pacific Coast Division. I would note this is not in the Cincinnati Division. To the Christian Voices for Life of Fort Bend County in Sugar Land, Texas, dated March 31st, 2011, that I have here with me today. They were asked specifically, again, this is a pro-life group, in your educational program, do you do education on both sides of the issues in your programs? Mr. Miller, your knowledge of the 501c3 application, is that an appropriate question to ask?
So I'm going to be honest, and I'm not going to be able to speak to a specific development letter in a specific case. I don't know that I can do that under 6103.
Okay, let me ask you about another letter that was received by a pro-life group, this one in Iowa. Their question specifically asked from the IRS to the Coalition for Life of Iowa, quote, please detail the content of the members of your organization's prayers. Would that be an appropriate question to a 501c3 applicant? The content of one's prayers.
It pains me to say I can't speak to that one either, but that's
You don't know whether or not that would be an appropriate question to ask an applicant?
Speaking outside of this case, which I don't know anything about, it would surprise me that that question was asked.
And finally, during another applicant's conversation or back and forth, they were asked specifically, quote, please detail certain signs that may or may not be held up outside of a Planned Parenthood facility, end quote. Would that be an appropriate follow-up to an applicant for 501c3 application?
Again, I don't know what the context would be, but again, that doesn't sound like the usual question.
Thank you. Well, hopefully, Mr. George and the Inspector General's office can enlighten us.
George, you have been on the job since November of 2004. Is that correct? In your current position?
2004.
Anything rise to this level before?
No, nothing.
Can I ask, why did it take so long from the first time we knew that this was happening to got the report done? I met the president said just the other day, I think it was yesterday, that he just got a look at the report, and that's the first time he knew anything about it.
Well, first,
other than reading it in the papers, I guess.
Are you asking how?
Yeah. So, have you ever seen that magnitude before? Anything
No,
this magnitude?
no.
It's never come up before.
No, it has not.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Now, you've been on the job for quite some years, but the current job you're in is from November 9th, 2012. So, is that right? So you just took over as acting commissioner.
In November of 12. Yes,
Okay.
I have both jobs.
All right. But before that, one of your jobs, you were the commissioner of tax-exempt and government entities division. So you actually were in the job that we're questioning now, that group of what was happening there. So would you have been in Cincinnati?
No.
You were never in Cincinnati?
No.
So is Cincinnati some outpost?
So obviously the IRS is a nationwide organization.
Oh, I know. I understand
With
that.
300
I understand that. And I want to tell you, listen, believe me, if you think it's uncomfortable sitting over there, you ought to be a private individual when the IRS is across from you questioning. So I got to tell you, it's uncomfortable for everybody. But my question more specifically is, so how did Cincinnati get to where they are? How did they develop that strategy? And how did they know to go after these certain groups? How did they target those folks? That just a couple rookies just showed up, didn't really know what they were doing?
So again, I would point to the TIGDA report on what happened.
No, I understand that. I understand that. But I'm hearing these are these are low-level people that push the wrong button. Now, when Cincinnati can't figure it out, who do they confer with? Who's their counsel? When they're looking at these entities, these tax-exempt entities. Does it come back here to D.C.?
There's two possibilities.
Yes or no? Does it come back to D.C.?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So D.C. and Cincinnati will be pretty well connected in understanding what's going on. So this doesn't come as a great shock to anybody. In fact, I would say it doesn't come as a shock. You know what it does for the American people? It really establishes what they feared so often. I have a grandson who's afraid to get out of bed at night because he thinks there's somebody under the bed that's going to grab him. And I think most Americans feel that way about the IRS. I mean, you get a letter from you folks or a phone call, it's with terror that you look at it. And now this kind of reconfirms that, you know what? They can do almost anything they want to anybody they want, anytime they want. This is very chilling for the American people. Now, I know that where you're at, you're resigning, you're walking away from it. But this is not going to go away. This is a Pandora's box that has been opened, and I don't think we can get the lid back on it. And I don't believe that the White House just found out about this in a news report. The president happened to grab a TV shot or just read Mr. George's report and said, you know what, anybody heard about this before? I'm just getting a first look at this. Shouldn't somebody be responsible? And I'm thinking maybe the executive office, maybe Treasury falls in there. I'm not sure that we understand how that organizational chart works. But I am really concerned. Now, I got to tell you, where you're sitting, you should be outraged. But you're not. The American people should be outraged, and they are. And this committee, this has nothing to do with political parties. This has to do with highly targeted groups. This reconfirms everything that the American public believes. This is a huge blow to the faith and trust that the American people have in their government. Is there any limit to the scope of where you folks can go? Is there anything at all? Is there any way that we could ask you, is there any question you shouldn't have asked? My goodness, how much money do you have in your wallet? Who do you get emails from? Whose sign do you put up in your front yard? This is a tax question? Now, you don't think that's intimidating? It's sure as hell intimidating. And I don't know that I got any answers from you today. And I don't know that what Mr. George has done is great work. But you know what? There's a heck of a lot more that has to come out in this. And anybody to sit here today and listen to what you have to say, I am more concerned today than I was before. And the fact that you all can do just about anything you want to anybody, you know, you can put anybody out of business that you want anytime you want. And I got to tell you, you talked about you're a horribly run organization. If you're on the other side of the fence, you're not given that excuse. And when the IRS comes in, you're not allowed to be shoddy. You're not allowed to be run horribly. You're not allowed to make mistakes. You're not allowed to do one damn thing that doesn't come in compliance. If you do, you're held responsible right then. I just think the American people have seen what's going on right now in their government. This is absolutely an overreach, and this is an outrage for all America. I yield back.
All right. Mr. Griffin is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr.
Right. He's recognized.
Chairman, thank you for getting to the truth in this scandal. Let's look at one of the Tea Party groups in my community. The founder, a small businesswoman, originally filed for tax-exempt status in July of 2010. Fully 20 months later, in February 2012, she received a letter from the IRS with numerous follow-up questions, a lot of them intrusive, but she answered every one of them and returned it well within the 2-week time window. Now, almost 3 years to the day that she first filed, her application is still pending. But let's look at what happened to her in the 3 years since she applied. Beginning in December 2010, she was visited by the FBI Domestic Terrorism Unit. Her personal returns and her business returns were both audited by the IRS. She received 4 FBI inquiries. In her business, received unsolicited audits, unscheduled audits by OSHA, the Commission on Environmental Quality, and the ATF twice. Now, this is a citizen and a small businesswoman who had never been audited by the IRS or any of these agencies until she applied to you for tax-exempt status for her Tea Party. You know, the broader question here, is this still America? Is this government so drunk on power that it would turn its full force, its full might, to harass and intimidate and threaten an average American who only wants her voice and their voices heard?
Now, continuing our ongoing report in and around the Great River Euphrates, Israelis inside the border of Syria? That's right. Fox News cameras caught Israeli commandos returning from within the border of Syria. The Israelis are worried about extremists, especially those linked to al-Qaeda, using the unrest in Syria to launch attacks against Israel. Israeli officials say that they are willing to do whatever is necessary to prevent such attacks. Inside Syria are many rebel groups from mild to extreme. Now, recent video footage shows one such extremist group executing prisoners of war while local townspeople shout, "God is great" in the background after the execution. Israel isn't taking any chances, of course. They said they're advancing for the first time in 40 years its forward artillery to provide an instant response capability. Just 2 weeks, this has occurred after they bombed a weapons storage facility in Syria. We brought you that just a few reports ago. Now, on another front regarding the same country, Syria, the U.S. and Russia are at odds over the Syrian civil war. The Obama administration says that Assad has to go, but the Russian government has supported the Assad family for 4 decades. Russia has also recently agreed to send Syria more sophisticated weapons. They've also made it absolutely clear, in spite of U.S. warnings, that they will continue to ship advanced missiles to Syria. General Martin Dempsey, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, expressed his displeasure over Russia's shipment of an anti-ship missile already delivered to Syria with a range of 180 miles and components of a high-altitude air defense missile, which could increase the risk of U.S. aircraft if the U.S. was to intervene in the Syrian civil war. That's right. Dempsey's biggest concern is that these weapons will give Assad a false sense of security. Russia is also building up its naval presence off Syria in an effort to keep the West out of involvement in the bloody civil war in Syria. In fact, Russia's largest post-war deployment of its naval forces outside the waters immediately surrounding Russia is taking place right now. Currently, there are over a dozen ships from frigates to destroyers that were dispatched to a key base in Syria. Now, analysts believe the message being sent by Russia is that they have strong interest in Syria and that there's not going to be a solution to this conflict unless it has the blessings of Russia. One of the latest worries of the United States is the potential of a shipment of S-300 system of guided missiles to the Assad regime. Now, these are some of the most sophisticated missiles capable of shooting down guided missiles as well as aircraft. Surrounding states are in fear of the spillover of the effects of these rebels leaving Syria and starting unrest in other nations, and they're concerned because they're fearing that this could thereby create a situation of regional unrest. Well, folks, over 2 years and not one leader on earth has offered a viable solution to the unrest in Syria or all of the Middle East for that matter. Only more hatred, wars, and loss of life. Like the tornadoes that we reported on today, it appears mankind and his governments are out of control and destroying everything in their path. I challenge any world leader who is truly looking for answers to their own as well as their nation's problems. I challenge you to contact Israel Hawkins, hear what he has to say concerning peace, give it 6 months, and I bet your whole nation will be turned around within that time. It's time for our world leaders to stop following the crowd of cowards and warmongers and start doing what their title dictates: lead. Think about it. You can go down in history as a true leader who actually not just talked peace, but was a part of bringing the peaceful solution to their nations. What do you have to lose? Now, you can find out more about the only solution to peace by contacting the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program at P.O. Box 2442, Abilene, Texas 79604, or you can call them at 888-613-9494, or visit them on the web at www.peacefulsolution.org, or send them an email at info@peacefulsolution.org. And for all of you who would like more information about the prophecies being fulfilled in these last days and what you could do to save yourself, you can contact the House of Yahweh for your free prophetic word and monthly newsletter by writing the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can also call them at 1-800-613-9494. You can visit them on the web at www.yahweh.com or email them at info@yahweh.com. Of course, all calls outside the United States, please dial the number on your screen. Up next, Israel Hawkins. For all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander. Thank you for joining us.